Hey, Mama, do you find yourself wishing you knew you were on the right path with your business? Or wanting to know how to do it all as a work at home mom and entrepreneur? If you struggle with imposter syndrome, mom guilt, or fear of failure, then you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Alexia, a Christian mindset coach passionate about teaching moms how to renew their minds to find success both in business and motherhood. You can overcome the negative thoughts holding you back from fully stepping into your calling. I know what it's like to worry your business will never work, to feel mom guilt every time you work on your business, to realize your mindset is hindering you, but not knowing how to change it in a Christ-centered way. I created the Mama with a Calling podcast to teach you how to use the powerful combination of God's Word and proven mindset strategies to help you break free from negative, paralyzing thoughts and gain clarity and confidence to go where God is leading you. As you step out of the old way of thinking and into God's way, you'll find more peace, joy, and purpose. Pop in those earbuds and get ready to let God work in you so he can work through you. Welcome back to the Mama with a Calling podcast. I'm Alexia. Thank you for joining me today. I have a special guest on the show, Andee Hart. She is a Christian, energetic entrepreneur, sales strategist, mentor, and host of the podcast She Sells Differently. She's a sales executive turned business owner. We're going to hear more about that in a minute. And now she helps teach women how to not be scared of sales and how to be competitive in the market, but also maintain our integrity as faith-based entrepreneurs. So thank you for being on the show today, Andee.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I'm excited because sales is like a big scary part for a lot of us. A lot of people listening, they don't come from a sales background at all or even a business background. So I think this is going to have a lot of good stuff in it today. So to get us started, can you just share like that journey, how you went from sale or from career executive to doing your own thing?
Yes, so first off, if you had ever told me when I was even in college that I would be in sales, I would have laughed. I totally would have laughed because sales was always a scary word for me too. And so I started off, I was a business major in college. I wanted to be a dance teacher. I grew up dancing all my life. I had a business plan to be a dance teacher. I got a job though in technology sales because a professor made me interview my senior year for a technology company. And I am dear friends with this professor today. And we always joke because she said when she made me interview, she was like, "You're going to thank me later." And so I always am like, "Thanks for making me interview for that job like 20 years ago." And
Mm-hmm.
so I got the job and I decided, and just after a lot of prayer about it, I decided this would be a good opportunity for me to get my feet wet in the corporate environment and to really learn, save up my money. I'll start a dance studio in a year or two. Well, after 17 years, I found myself still in the corporate sales world. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized I was not good at it when I first started. And I'm not sure a lot of people are good at sales when they first start, right? But I just had that tenacity and I kept learning and I didn't give up. And I think that that is something that really helped me because I didn't give up. And if your audience hears one thing when it comes to sales, not giving up and that tenacity is so critically important, no matter what you're
Mm-hmm.
selling. And so fast forward, I worked my way up. Was at two different technology companies. And as of a year and a half ago, I had worked my way up to I was a global sales director for a Fortune 200 company. And it's not that I was miserable or hated my job, but I felt the Lord just pulling me towards something else. And always had that entrepreneur fire in me. And during the pandemic, I'd actually started a candle company and started wholesaling my candles all over North America. And so that had just really taken off and grown. And so I had the opportunity to leave my corporate job and start and just work on my candle company full time. And so that is what I have been doing the past year and a half. And I have started helping other product entrepreneurs learn how to wholesale their products as well and overcome that anxiety of selling. And it has been a fun adventure. I've never looked back. So,
That's awesome. And I like that. I feel like it's a twist. I know it's different than my story where I was like, I don't like this career. And so sometimes we are coming from that, from almost like a place of, I desperately need something else. So it's interesting that there, some people listening, they may not hate their job, but they are feeling God call them to something else. And they're kind of going like, is that possible? Like, what is that? And the thought of doing something else, like you started a candle company, which I think is so, to me, if I were, I would totally have the thoughts of like, there are a lot of candles out there. Like, how am I going to stand out? And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you, like, why you started a candle company, like what got you started there, and then how that took off and how that grew. Because I feel like there are plenty of people who probably try to make candles and like nothing happens. So, like, what was different about your journey there?
Yeah, I wish I had a dollar every time someone told me that the candle industry is saturated. And probably a lot of your listeners, whatever industry they're in, whatever you're selling, they are being just inundated with those fears or those thoughts that someone else is doing this, someone else, or this industry is saturated. And I had some really successful people out in the business world telling me that. And I would be lying if I told you that it did not stop me in my tracks at times. And I did not let those fears hold me up. And even still to this day, it can be challenging for me. And I think that that is the enemy just throwing lies and just holding me up from really pursuing what the Lord has put before me as my purpose. And so I have always loved being creative and just making beautiful things. I love to paint. I actually painted this picture.
That, yeah.
I can't tell what I was, this
Yeah.
picture behind me. I know it's a podcast, so they can't see, but I love to create and just make beautiful things. And why wouldn't we love to create no matter what we're creating? Because we're made in the image of God, who's the ultimate creator, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just got this wild hair idea one day. I'm gonna start making candles. This was, during the pandemic when we're all in lockdown, and I'm gonna give them to friends who are at home and just to bless them. And I had friends that were giving me feedback that they loved them. And so I thought, well, why not start selling them? Because I love, I actually love sales. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just started getting into wholesale, and I just had good success with it. And I created a path that set my candles apart. And I know a lot of people, when they hear that, they're going to say, oh, I always hear that you have to find your unique, what sets your products apart. And that is true. It does take a lot of market research and a lot of knowing your product and a lot of knowing your target audience, whatever industry you're in. And guess what? You're not going to get it right, probably your first try. And if you do, that's amazing. You're probably one of the few that do. I did not get it right at first. I spent several months just floundering around and
Mm-hmm.
making a lot of pitches to retailers that came back to me with crickets. And that is part of the beauty of the art of sales, is that you continue to refine your approach. And eventually, though, you're going to nail it and you're going to start to hear yeses. And so that is where you just have to continue to refine your approach, how you're pitching your products or your services, and you're going to get it right eventually, but it may take failing 10, 100 times before you get it right and find that unique niche that your products hit in the market.
Well, and that goes back to that tenacity, which I think, I mean, obviously is required, like you're saying, figuring it out, continuing not to give up. But I think a lot of people probably do not, they have to
Yeah.
want to sell, right? You have to believe in what you're offering, see the potential there. And I think a lot of people get obviously hung up on the beginning part of, I don't have anything that's valuable. I have nothing to
Right.
offer, all of that. So, like, once you have to get through that to get to that place where it's like, God's put this on my heart. Like, I don't know what's going to come of it. And like you're saying, that first no, it doesn't mean that you stop. It means, okay, well, that didn't work. Now we got to keep tweaking and tweaking. And that tenacity to keep figuring it out is something that you have to channel. Like we all have that in different areas of our lives. Like we went through college or went to grad school or med school or whatever. And like people do these things and you have it there because you know what you're
Yes.
going for and you believe in yourself and the potential. But when you go into business, it's sort of like it's so vulnerable feeling because it's your baby.
Yes. It's also vulnerable, especially when you're creating something, whether you're creating a product or you're creating a service. You just hit the nail on the head. It's vulnerable because it's something that's personal to you. And
Mm-hmm.
so I always address with people that I work with, my clients, I talk to them about hearing the word no, especially in sales, because that is really hard for a lot of people. And that will stop people in their tracks and they'll just abandon their dreams at the
Mm-hmm.
first no. And so I really hone in that no, you cannot take that personal because you don't know what the other person is going through that day. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, no is not a rejection, it just means not yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so you often hear no means next. I always say no means not yet because there have been so many times that I've heard the word no. And when I really dig in, and I'm sometimes depending on, the person that I hear the word no from, I will just ask for feedback. And I have gotten the most valuable feedback that has led me to get yeses
Mm-hmm.
from the next customers. And so often you'll hear no, but it can turn into a yes from that same person that gave you a no down the road. So I think understanding and going into it with a mindset that no is not a personal rejection on you or even your product or your service is so important. No is for the person that's giving you a no. That just means for them, it's not the right timing and it's not personal to you at all. That mindset is so healthy when you are going into a sales perspective. And so that has always helped me. And it's very, very hard when it's something that you personally created to not take that personally.
Mm-hmm. I was writing down because I think not taking it personally is huge because, and I think that comes from somebody like we said, is already they're feeling really vulnerable about doing this in the first place. So I think that's why it's really important to believe in what you're doing to see its value, right? But then so that when somebody tells you no, it's not, see, it's not going to work, that was a bad
Yeah.
idea. But also to like you said, to expect no. I think if people understood that no, like you were not going to get a bunch of yeses. And like as a scientist, that was one of the things that was actually hard about going into science because 95% of the time, the answer is no. You do an experiment and the answer is no. And I had a hard time with that because I was like, I want them all, like we all do, we want them all
Right.
to be yeses. But it's not that it's invaluable. It just tells you that it's not that. And you keep going and going and going and going until you find the yes. And each no is like pointing you to what you need to do next to potentially get a yes. But if you give up, you will never get the yes. And so it's the same kind of thing with this. And so I think helping people realize that no is part of the process. Like you're not failing when you hear no. It's like you only fail when you quit. But I also was
Yes.
thinking like it's a numbers game. So and that may not always be the case, and depending on what you're doing. But I feel like, in the coaching world, I remember when I first got started, I heard like if you have to talk to 10 people to get one yes. And so
Hmm.
it's like that means you have to hear nine people say not right now. And that feels scary. But if you understand that, then it doesn't mean anything negative about you. It's like, okay, well, that was, got to go on, like you said, going to the next person, but you can get feedback, you can get insight on why they said no. And like, if we think about ourselves, we don't say yes to everything that comes across
Right.
but it doesn't mean we don't want it. It doesn't mean it's not a good idea. It's like, maybe I can't afford that right now. Maybe it's not the season for that right now. Maybe I got distracted before I went and bought because my kid did something crazy. Like there's a million
Right.
reasons that has nothing to do with what the person's selling or the person.
Right. And I have two examples for you. One, I had a coaching client that came into my sphere of influence probably a year and a half ago when I first left corporate America. And she joined my membership, and then she wanted to try out a subscription box for her products. And I just told her, that's not my specialty. I would love to, have you in my membership, but it's not my specialty. I'm going to point you to someone else that can better serve you. And so she went and did that for a while and realized this is not at all what I want to do. And I really want to learn how to wholesale my
Mhm.
candles like you do. And she just 2 weeks ago came back and signed up for my wholesale course. So it was a testament, though, that
Mhm.
a year and a half ago, it was not the right timing for her. And she needed to go and explore that path and that passion for her. And had I put pressure on her to stay with me, that wouldn't have served her well.
Mhm.
And now she needed to go figure that out on her own. And she came back and now she's working with me and we're having such a fun time building up her wholesale and her retail accounts. And so that is such a great example, though, of me directing her to someone that can really serve her well. And it's not me, that's not my wheelhouse. I know my target audience, and I don't serve
Mhm.
people that want to do subscription boxes, but I know someone that does that really, really well, you know? So that's one example. And then when I first started wholesaling, my candles, I was still, trying to figure out my packaging, and I had my dream retailer. I was pitching my products to this beautiful boutique, and they told me no. And this was like the retailer I really wanted to be in. And I got up the guts to ask them for feedback. And they told me that my packaging, the labeling looked cheap. And it was really hard to hear. So,
Mhm.
even more so than hearing the word no, that was like, ugh. And she was very kind about it, but she said, your label looks very cheap and it doesn't look like something we want to put on our shelves. And if you did this, with thicker cardstock and got it professionally done and maybe had, laminated, like, just done with a professional printer, it would look amazing. So I took that feedback and I went and outsourced my labels, and I had the labels completely redone. And I will tell you, Alexia, I had my wholesale orders went up probably 20% after that.
Oh, that's nice.
And so the feedback that I got from that one no, even though it was hard to hear, I implemented that and it really skyrocketed my orders. So sometimes it's hard to hear, but just taking that and not letting it hurt your ego, but letting
Mhm.
it really catapult your business can be really a game changer.
Especially when you like like you said, it's seeking that feedback comes from a place of like maturity, but also recognizing, like not trying to be, I don't want to say like we would say in the South, like too big for your britches kind of a thing. Like you're trying to get like instead of trying to act like you know everything, you're kind of coming in saying, I mean, in student mode is the way, like apprentice
Yeah.
mode or something. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, and that's okay because I want to learn. And so you chose to do it by like diving in there and just like sort of meeting the no. But some people might do it by getting a course and saying, I don't know what to do. So I'm going to buy this course or learn from this mentor. And a lot of us, I've realized this too. A lot of people will buy courses or get mentorship and then they like resist what they're being told
Hmm.
because they don't like we're so far removed from student any like we're out of that, right, a lot of us, and so we're used to being in charge in some capacity, or we have our we want to pave our own way, and it's like the humility to humble yourself and say, I don't know, I'm going to do what they're saying because what, like this boutique, if they're giving that feedback, then other people might think the same thing, if you have a course, whatever it is. And so getting that is a really great way to just, like you said, just to be okay with not knowing, but you're in the learning process and knowing that that is is failing. You know, the classic example they give in business is like, or even with anything, is that, if a baby like fell down the first time and tried to walk, would be like, oh, it's done, can't walk. Like, no, you keep,
Right.
you get up, you keep trying. And it's the same kind of thing, but we don't like that feeling, I think, as adults, like that we're so, it's like you're back at the bottom again. Like you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to do sales. You don't know these things. And those are skills. It's not that you have to be naturally good at it either, right? Like I'm assuming sales is something you can learn, but it does
Yes.
require a whole bunch of mindset shifts to be able to do that.
Yes. And I mean, I've been in sales for 17 years and making the shift from selling face to face to corporate executives now to online sales has been very humbling for me, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so I have had to kind of go back and relearn online sales and invest in some courses and start from the ground up. And I think there is a biblical principle in there too of from a sales perspective that and that is one of the reasons why I named my business and my podcast She Sells Differently because so many of the sales tactics out there and the sales training that I got in corporate America were, you know, just the kind of in your face. Um, I kind of jokingly call them those bro tactics, you know.
The bro marketing.
Uh, yeah, and so there's a different way, and if I, as a Christian, am truly wanting to model my life like Jesus Christ, and He calls us to humble ourselves, and you just hit the nail on the head with I can learn and be confident in my skills and still be humble and learn from someone that knows and has a different skill set from me. And so there is a sweetness in that even after 17 years of sales experience that I can step back and learn from someone that has a different skill set from me. And that you can sell from a place of humility and not have a in your face pushy, attitude when you're selling your products. Because that's certainly not the in sales, you see sales all throughout the Bible if you actually look at it. That's certainly not the kind of sales that I see. And that is actually in 17 years not the kind of salesperson that I was. Even in a corporate boardroom, I was the only female in with 20 men, and I was not pushy at all and very effective. And so I am here to say that if you're scared, if the word sales scares you because you feel like you have to be really pushy and kind of that boss babe, mentality, you can be effective in sales and lean into the personality that God gave you and still be really effective. So I think there's just really good I love that you brought up the humility because you can be very effective and be humble as well. So
I like that. And I want to talk about that more because I think that sometimes we're coming in and the reason we don't like to be humble, we wouldn't call it that, but that's what's happening, is that it's sort of embarrassing. It feels like you have to be okay being in that learning position. And a lot of times when people are leaving, and this comes with wrapping our identity in our career and who we are, right? So
mhm.
the success. And so going from being successful to then when you step into your own business, whether online or like you're saying, physical products, that you're dealing with a lot of emotion potentially of like, what are people going to think? I left my career, that I need to be successful very quickly. And so it's like over like ignoring all of those thoughts and saying it doesn't matter what people think. They probably don't even understand the process or business or any of that. And that part of the process is learning, and that's okay. That will get you to that success. When you try to like skip that, it's not helpful. So I think that's like there's tons of mindset shifts there. But I love how you talked about the bro marketing kind of thing. And we think about like a used car salesman. I think is what the feeling people get. Like when you don't like sales, it's because you think of the people, I feel like the people in like the mall or like Costco that like chase you down and like, hey, will you do this? And it feels so uncomfortable because, or at least I mean, I try to be nice to the people,
Yes.
but like when they
Yeah.
won't listen to you, say no. Or like, you can tell they're bothering everyone who's just trying to do their shopping is what it feels like. And so I'd like to hear more, and I'm sure everybody else would too, about what that looks like, because that sounds refreshing, right? To come as like be me. And I was like reading your sound like come as you
Yeah.
are. And like how that can be effective in sales and how you don't have to be in your face, because that's definitely what we hear, what we think of, that I need to be out there, I need to be visible, I need to be like all over the place, or it's not going to be successful. So how do you teach it differently? What do you suggest?
Yeah. So one of the things I will say, I do say, yeah, definitely be out there and be visible, but that can look different though. It doesn't have to be out there and in your face. Um, Being visible doesn't have to look like selling, 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 buy my product all the time. Being visible can look like educating and serving your ideal client. And so I focus more on serving and storytelling and educating. And by doing that, and I want you to think about, and probably a lot of your listeners, they have those certain people or, that they listen to or they follow. And you probably being one of them. And it's like, why do you follow Alexia? Right? Because you love her podcast. She serves you on by the content that she provides on the podcast, right? And you're being educated and you love the tips and advice that you get from her. And so that is part of the process, though, right? That is part of the process. And so selling doesn't always have to look like buy my product, buy my product, buy my product. It looks like you are serving your audience by meeting them where they are. And a lot of times we as people that are, we're selling, right? We're building a business, but we are constantly putting out a product that meets the need of what our audience we think the our audience, the problem that our audience thinks they have, instead of meeting the need that our audience, the I didn't say that right. Let me restate that. We are trying to solve the problem that we think our audience has instead of meeting our audience and solving the problem that they think that they have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just by serving them and offering them advice and education can bring them into your sphere of influence. And then you drop those nuggets of, hey, do you want to learn more? Here's a program for you. And that is okay to do. That is okay to do. I don't ever want to like squash that of saying don't ever make an offer, right? We are in sales, and even like if you look through scriptures, you see Lydia was a seller of purple. You look through Proverbs 31. Even in Proverbs 31, it talks about she takes the woman of noble character. She takes her sashes to the merchant. That is actually wholesaling right there, which is what I teach. Paul, who wrote half of the New Testament, was a tent maker. He had to go sell his tents somewhere, right? And so it is okay to make your offers, but stop and think about, are you making an offer all of the time, or are you really stopping to educate and serve your audience at least half of the time too? And meet your audience where they are instead of where they could be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and such a hard one because
Yeah.
especially if you did all the work of figuring out what you really want to help people with, and then you start saying it, but realizing they don't even know they want help with that. Now, it depends on what you're doing, right? You can
Yeah.
create a product for people who know what they're looking for and it aligns, that's probably the easier thing to do. But a lot of us have something that we are having to kind of show them why this is what they need, or, speaking to
Hmm.
that other need. And that's a hard one, because normally that means that you, like, I have friends who do like health, and they don't want to talk about weight loss. They're like, it's like really deeper than that, but they know the
Yeah.
person's looking for weight loss. And so it like becomes this confusing thing. But I like how you said, it's about serving, it's about educating, it's about connecting with them, and then, but not selling. Like, don't, it doesn't mean that you never sell. So like people will
Right.
get on the other side of that. They're like, never mention that they have anything to offer. And so two things, I guess. One, I just listened to like a interview with Seth Godin, and he was talking about like marketing being like that. You don't have to kind of be out there all over the place, all over social media, and like, hey, buy my stuff. Because if you have something that you believe in and that is really serving people, it will just naturally. Now, I don't know how, like, he's Seth Godin, but it will naturally eventually, like, you can basically, it's like if you talk about it and serve people, they will naturally, if it's really valuable and really meets the need, they will naturally tell somebody else. And then they will just be like, have you heard, kind of a thing. Not that
Hmm.
because they will like start sharing it all on its own. So there's also the waiting. Like, if you're not going to be kind of in people's face and you don't like that, and you don't want to, that method, I mean, there's a reason that what we mean when we say that, is because
Right.
it is effective in that way. They might get sales. I don't know if it's effective in transformation, but they're selling. And so, but we are interested in transformation. We're interested in serving people. So I think that it doesn't have to be hard. It is uncomfortable to sell, but not if you believe in what you're selling. And like you said, kind of more often you are serving people, and it's really an act of service to sell them something. And I wonder, I'm sure you talk about that, but can you talk about that a little bit, about shifting what sales means, like what it means to sell something to somebody? Because a lot of people don't
Yes.
like taking money. It's like, I need money, so I'm getting their money. And it's like, that's not what it is.
I love that you brought this up because I say this all the time, and all the time, like any of my students that listen to this episode are going to go, "Oh my goodness, I'm a broken record." But I say this all the time: when you have a product or service that brings value to the world, you owe it to share about it. You owe it to share about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say it again. When you have a product or service that brings value to the world, which could also be translated as when God has given you a gift, when God has given you a gift or a talent, then you owe it to share it with others. And that is okay to take money for it. It's also okay and to give it when it's appropriate. You don't give that away though. Like you make money as a living. Like we are called to make money as a living, right? We're called to do that in scripture. It's okay to give that when it's appropriate. It's also okay to turn people away when that's appropriate, to have boundaries in your business. But it is right and good to work for a living and to take money for the good gifts that you have been blessed with. That also means to be fair and to work with integrity and to, like I said, have boundaries in that and to not exploit people, to not take advantage of people, to know your wheelhouse. And like I was saying earlier, when I had a student that, she wanted to do something that was not really within my wheelhouse, I said, go over here. This person can better serve you, right? So, understanding your gifts is so important. And that way, that when someone does come and say, I really want to learn this, and you know that you can help them, you can accept payment for that with full good conscience. And that is a gift that the Lord has given you. So, I also want to say something else, just a good analogy about something we were talking about earlier, selling, actually like making an offer. I want you to think about this. My sister-in-law and I are going plant shopping on Friday. And we have been doing research about houseplants. And I want you to think about if you are going to a nursery, like a garden center, and you talk to someone and they're educating you on all the houseplants and you're asking questions and you're like, okay, that's great. Yeah, I think I want that one and I want this rose geranium and I want this plant, but they never actually lead you to the checkout counter. But they just keep on talking to you and talking and talking. How frustrating would it be if they never made an offer to actually like for you to buy?
Mm-hmm. Or they weren't even
And
for sale. They're just talking to you about
right,
plants. You
right.
can't buy them here. You can just look at them, learn about them.
And that's the same thing if you never sell. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have something of value that I want. I want your lovely plants to decorate my home or my yard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the same thing that, yes, your education and your value that you're talking to me about the plants are great. But at some point, I want to purchase your plants and I am gladly going to pay good money for them. And so you need to think about it as the same thing is that you need to be making an offer. You need to be saying, and this is what this costs. And if you would like to take this home, or you would like to invest in this course, or this coaching, or this product, here it is. Because if you don't, someone else is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there's two things that come to mind. One is that when you're somebody who's listening to you educate about whatever the topic is, they don't really care about that. They're trying to do something. They're trying to accomplish something. And so when they're there listening and then you have that offer, that really helps them reach the goal they're trying to get
Mm-hmm.
to, right? And then I guess I have three things too, or yeah, second is that what I always say, and like what I'm teaching about this is that when you sell something, the person, it's like what Jesus says, like your heart is where your treasure where your heart is. Because when you pay for something, you're helping them get in that mindset of like, I care about this enough to give money for this thing. And so, because what happens in that transitions to number three is that so many people want to give their stuff away for free. They feel
Mm-hmm.
bad that they understand the concept of working for money. But when it comes to helping someone with health or something motherhood related, or especially faith related, there's this, I should not charge people. I should just help
Yes.
them. And it's like, yes, but like I just said, they need the push that it helps the person want to actually do it. Because I can give stuff away free, but is somebody going to show up and actually like do whatever it is that I have them to do? Or is them paying make them care about it, to actually go through the course? Because if they're going to do coaching with me, that's kind of intense. They have to meet with me and do this mindset work and do all this stuff. And it's like, if it's for free, it's easy to say, I don't have time for that. Like I have so many other things going on, right? So charging is important, but also like I think about Paul and the tip maker, but also Paul talks about how it's totally fine to get paid as when you're, doing working for God. It's just that he chose not to because he was establishing different things. That doesn't mean he couldn't or
Yeah.
shouldn't.
Yeah.
And so I think those factors are also at play too, is like understanding what the sell is, because it's true. If you are coming in with the mindset, I need money, I'm going to get their money. Yeah, it feels like icky because that's not the right heart with sales, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And also you brought up a good point when I talk about like, can you give those things away for free? You, you certainly can. And there is a time and a place to use your gifts to serve. Um, for example, when I just recently moved, but my church in North Carolina was like, hey, we could really use your skills to help, flesh out an interview for a ministry role that we need on staff here. Am I going to charge my church for that? No. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a time and a place to use your God-given skills. Um, and then there's a time and a place to charge, right? So yes, you can use your skills to serve really well, and you can use your skills to make a living. And there's a reason why God gave them to you. And so um, I love that you talk so much about mindset, because mindset is so important in sales. And I hope that your listeners, if they hear anything in this episode, because sales is just so much of getting over hearing that word no, expecting to hear the word no, and understanding that the Lord gave us a gift to have dominion and make money,
Mm-hmm.
and that we we should share our gift with the world, especially when it blesses others. It blesses others, and there's nothing wrong with making an offer um, when we can bring value to others. What a gift that we have to share with others. So, yeah.
Yeah, so true. So, what are some, kind of as we wrap up here, what are some first steps to help somebody like start, like, moving toward sales and being okay with it and shifting the way they see things?
That's a great question. I always say that sales is like when you are going to a gym, you have to go and work those muscles out, right? Because you can't just expect to be good at it and like have big muscles
Yeah.
without actually practicing. And so I always say it's, 10 seconds of courage to make an offer, and give yourself grace. Give yourself grace, because you are not going to um, whether you are, in person and, you make an offer to someone, or you have a campaign that you're, launching a product online, right? Whatever that sales process looks like, give yourself grace, but take action. Take action, because you will never be able to improve if you don't step foot in the gym and take action. And guess what? After the first time you go, you take action, you're going to learn things from that, and you're going to build your muscle, and you're going to improve. And then you're going to do it again, and you're going to get better. And so every time that you do these repetitions, you're going to just slowly improve. But I always tell people, whatever that looks like, whatever offer that you're making, take action, because there are successful companies out there that are wildly successful because they simply first made that offer, no matter how terrible it was. And maybe they made one sale, maybe they didn't make any, but they learned from that and they implemented and they made a second offer. So that is your first step, is take that imperfect action.
Yeah, and I think it'll show you that it's probably not as scary as
Mm-hmm.
your mind created it to be. And like you said, then you keep going from there. Well, you also have things that you offer. So can you share with people how they can learn, if they're interested in learning from you, learning more about sales, where can they connect with you and see what you have, your podcast and things?
Yes. So I have a podcast. It's called She Sells Differently. I have been running that for just almost a year, or right at a year now. And then I also, you can find me at andeehart.com. It's ANDEEHART, andeehart.com. And that's the same on Instagram as well, andeehart.com.
Well, thank you so much. I'll put those links in the description. Thank you for being here today. This was a really great conversation. I hope that it inspires and encourages women to like not be afraid to do sales in their business, because without sales you don't have a business. So this is
Yes.
a crucial part of that. So thank you so much for being here.
Yes. Thank you. I hope it was a blessing to everyone.
Definitely. Thanks for listening to the Mama with a Calling podcast. As always, you'll find the show notes for today's episode at mamawithacalling.com/podcast. Really quick before you head out, are you loving these episodes? To make sure this podcast gets in the ears of as many mamas as possible, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. I'm going to be reading your reviews on the podcast, so I can't wait to hear from you. Also, if you know someone that needs to hear these episodes, grab a screenshot and share it on Instagram, and don't forget to tag me at Mama with a Calling so I can share it in my stories. Until next time, keep pursuing your calling.